So when we're coding in Animate, you do have a few choices of coding environments. You can choose HTML, and there's even a WebGL preview mode, but from what I've read online, that's not working as well as they'd hoped at this point. To demonstrate the basics of coding though, we're going to choose Actionscript 3. And don't worry about the size of the canvas or anything yet. That's all we want. Okay. I'm working in the default Animator workspace. Okay, so to make sure you're in that, choose Animator up here and reset to Animator there. And that way your workspace will look exactly the same as mine. So to start with, we really need objects that we interact with. You can code purely beforehand and make objects appear based on the code, but sometimes that's really hard to comprehend, especially when you're starting to code. So what we're going to do is I'm going to choose this rectangle tool, and I might scroll down a little bit here and just give it a bit of a curvature. So when I curve it out, you can see it sort of looks similar to a button in a way. I'll just tighten it a bit. Now I didn't really want that outline, so I'm just going to delete that. Now this shape, it doesn't matter at this point, it's just to give you an example of what you can do. There is a hierarchy of creating objects and symbols in Animate. You can start with a graphic if you want, so that we can use this later in other things. So we convert this symbol to start with to a graphic, which is fine. Or you then convert it to a movie clip if you want the movie clip. Now at the moment I'm breaking my own rule here of not naming things. I'm just going symbol 1, symbol 2. Obviously it's good to say button, I'm just going to put GRC, and button MOV for movie, just to give them exclusive names.
So why is there a second button?
One's a graphic, which I can use again in other areas. They're not buttons at this point. I'm just calling them that because it's going to become one.
And then, so you just go through that again?
I'll come back to it again and do another one. Okay, so I'll continue with this. So all I've done is converted this symbol a few times. I converted it to a graphic, then I converted it to a movie clip, and this movie clip I'm going to convert to a button. I'll just call it blue BTN for the moment. Okay. Now, when we run these, I'll show you. I'm going to put all of them on the stage just to show you the difference. If I double click on a graphic, it just opens it up to be edited. That's it. If I double click on a movie clip, it opens up with its own exclusive timeline, as we saw with animating. If I double click on a button, I suddenly have a different timeline. Now, by default, with buttons, what we can do is we can control how the button works. So we have the up state, that's what this keyframe here means, and up state means the button's not being clicked. We then have what's called the over state. So when you roll a mouse over, now obviously this is mouse dependent, not touch screen. When you roll a mouse over it, we can change the state. So I'm going to insert a keyframe just to have that state set. All right. And with these states, you can add layers. So when we roll our mouse button over, I'm going to insert another keyframe above and just add a little bit of helpful text. Blue is probably not the best color for that. I'll just change that to black and lift it up. Oop, maybe that's a bit big. Like that. Okay. So what this means is when I roll over this mouse, it should highlight click here. Okay. You can add other effects as well. So because this is a movie clip, movie clips have a whole lot of effects that you can add to if you want. And you'll see it's got filters. In the filters, you could add a glow. Probably not red. Let's make it a light blue. And blur it out. So not only does it display some text, it glows as well. It's just to help indicate that that button is ready to be activated. We haven't clicked on it yet. So I'm going to go back to the scene and go Command Return just to show you. There's my graphic, nothing much with that. There's my movie clip. Roll over the button though, and we start getting interactivity. You see the little finger point as well. So automatically it knows that this is an active component. Now, it doesn't do anything though. If I click it, nothing's going to happen. So we actually have to add some code for the button. This is in our main scene, scene 1. I'm going to add a new layer. Double click on here and call it Actions. What you do is you create a layer that holds all of your scripting in it. And this is the Actions layer. So I'll put in a keyframe. So that's it. Whoops, it's already had a keyframe. I didn't need to do that. What I do want to do is put some actions in. So you right click, like you'd insert a keyframe, but you'll notice at the bottom of the menu there, it's got an Actions option. So we're going to click on that. Now, for some reason, I don't know why, mine won't show this unless it's floating above the rest of the workspace. So that's what I'm dragging it out there. Yours might work straight away inside there. Now, when we run this program, if I had a longer timeline, I might want it to sit still for that button at the beginning. So it could be like begin game button if you want, or start button. So we want our movie, as they call a flash movie, to stop. That's the first thing we need to do. Now, I've just copied in what I posted, and I'm going to explain this to you. We've got this part here automatically goes in. So once you start typing code and it knows you've got a mouse event, this will automatically appear. You don't have to type it, but copy and paste it in. Now, it's referring to what we call an event listener. So we're adding what's called an event listener. That is an object or process or action that happens on the stage and it's listening out to it. So it's like, is this event occurring, and listening for it. This event listener though, I hope the phone's helping add to this. The event listener is listening for a start button. Now, I haven't told Animate that there is a start button yet. You might think I have because I've created the button, but it doesn't actually know it exists. To ensure that happens, what we need to do is, I'm just going to close the actions at the moment, is I need to select my button, and you'll see up here there's an instance name. I'm pretty sure I called it Start BTN. I have a way of naming things for coding. It's really good to make them really clear what they are. So I use a capital to label it, and then the capital with the following part defines it. So I'm calling it is a button. If I need to look through the code, I know it's a button, but it's the start button. It's to start the game. So I've now given that an instance name. We go back to the actions. Start BTN, we're adding that event listener. It's a mouse event, which will be a click. When we click, we're going to run a function called scene change. Now, again, Animate doesn't know what I'm talking about, so we have to define it. Underneath here, I define this function, scene change, which is an event, a mouse event, and you don't have to remember all of these things, why they exist. You just need to know that they need to be in there. I'm explaining just so you understand generally what it's doing. When scene change is clicked, when start button is clicked, we do this function called scene change. And the function is to go to and stop at frame 1, scene 2. I don't actually have a scene 2 yet. So going back here, you probably haven't seen this or noticed, but over on the left, we actually can make multiple scenes within Animate. So I'm going to add scene 2 like that. You'll see that the stage is now cleared. There's nothing on it. I'm going to quickly put in a shape so we can see it changes. So it doesn't matter what it is. It's sitting there. Bring up my timeline a bit too. Okay, doesn't matter if that's off stage. But we now know that scene 2 looks like that and scene 1 looks like this. Now if I jump to scene 2 and play it, by default it runs through that scene and will go back to the beginning again. So I'm going to ask a question here. What do I need to do to make sure that doesn't happen? It's right at the beginning. This is a test of how much you're listening. What did I do on scene 1? The very first bit of coding. Yep. Stop. Yeah, I want it to stop here. I don't want it to run an animation yet or do anything. So same thing again, we add an actions layer. Right click up here. Make sure that's in. Stop, bracket, close bracket, semicolon. And that now has a stop. So if I go command return, I get my rollover and click, I now go to scene 2. What I'm going to say as an exercise is, see if you can make 3 scenes where you can choose to go to any scene from each of those scenes. So if you've got 3 scenes on scene 1, go to scene 2 or 3. Scene 2, go to scene 1 or 3, and scene 3, 1 or 2. See if you can start making that navigation just to get a sense of how the coding works. It's very basic coding, but it will make more sense as you start applying it in different contexts. Okay?